Have you ever wondered if you're doing things that quietly push people away, but no one dares to tell you? As we grow older, we begin to settle into certain habits. Some are comforting, even wise, but others can turn into blind spots. You might think you're simply being yourself, but the truth is, the people around you notice. And while they may not say anything, those habits can quietly impact how you're perceived by family, friends, and even strangers. In this video, we're going to uncover 12 uncomfortable things you might be doing in old age that everyone notices, but no one tells you about. Each of these signs will challenge you to reflect, not to judge yourself harshly, but to gently hold a mirror up and say, is this still serving me or is it pushing people away? And here's the good news. Most of these habits are completely fixable. The first step is simply becoming aware. By the end of this video, you'll not only know what to look out for, but also how to carry yourself with more confidence, clarity, and grace in your later years. So stay with me until the end, because you may realize that a few small changes can make a big difference in how others experience you, and more importantly, how you experience yourself. Number 1, neglecting personal hygiene. One of the first things people silently pick up on but rarely mention is when someone stops taking care of their hygiene. And I'm not talking about major neglect either. It's the little things. Wearing clothes that look like they've been worn 3 days in a row, hair that hasn't been brushed, fingernails that go just a little too long, a faint odor that lingers a bit too long after you leave the room. These may seem small, but they speak volumes. See, hygiene isn't just about cleanliness. It's about how we carry ourselves. In our younger years, we usually maintain these habits without even thinking. But as we get older, energy wanes, routines change, and some people start to feel like, what's the point? That shift is subtle, but the people around you notice. What many don't realize is that there's solid science behind this. A study from the Gerontological Society of America found that maintaining personal hygiene isn't just about appearance. It's directly linked to how others perceive your competence and dignity. When researchers interviewed family members about their aging relatives, personal hygiene was consistently mentioned as a key indicator of how well someone was holding up mentally and emotionally. But here's what often gets overlooked. Many older adults face real physical challenges with self-care. Arthritis can make buttoning a shirt painful. Balance problems can make showering dangerous. Decreased mobility might make it hard to trim toenails. Dr. Elizabeth Carter from Johns Hopkins explains, what family members perceive as letting go is often an adaptation to physical limitations that the older person feels embarrassed to mention. So how can you tell the difference between normal aging adjustments and concerning neglect? Look for dramatic changes. If someone who is always meticulously clean suddenly stops caring, it might signal depression or cognitive decline. The National Institute on Aging recommends watching for multiple hygiene issues appearing simultaneously as a potential red flag. For those struggling with self-care, adaptive tools can make a tremendous difference. Bath chairs, long-handled brushes, elastic shoelaces, and button hooks are all simple solutions that preserve independence. Many senior centers and medical supply stores offer these tools at reasonable prices, or even free through Medicare Advantage plans. The truth is, people respond to your energy before they respond to your words. And hygiene is one of the clearest reflections of that energy. When you take care of yourself, it quietly invites others to treat you with kindness, closeness, and dignity. That's a message worth sending. Number 2, speaking without a filter. As we age, something curious tends to happen. The inner voice that once said, maybe don't say that out loud, gets a little quieter and sometimes disappears altogether. You start speaking your mind more freely, maybe even proudly thinking, I've earned the right to say whatever I want. And while that may feel liberating, the people around you often feel something very different. Discomfort. There's a fascinating neurological reason for this. Dr. Sarah Thompson, a neuropsychologist at the University of Michigan, explains the frontal lobe, which governs impulse control and social filtering, naturally thins as we age. This doesn't happen to everyone, but many older adults experience some degree of disinhibition. In other words, those filters that once caught potentially hurtful comments before they left your mouth may not work as efficiently anymore. You see, there's a fine line between honesty and bluntness. Over time, if you find yourself saying things that make people pause, shift in their chairs, or avoid eye contact, it might be a sign that what's coming out isn't just truth, it's harshness. A landmark study from the University of California followed intergenerational relationships over 15 years and found something striking. The single biggest predictor of emotional distance between older adults and their families wasn't physical health issues or even memory problems. It was perceived criticism. When younger family members consistently felt judged or criticized, they gradually reduced contact, even while feeling guilty about it. Maybe you caught yourself making remarks about someone's weight, appearance, relationship, or even how they're raising their kids. Maybe you brushed it off with a chuckle and said, "I'm just being honest," or "Back in my day, we weren't so sensitive." But here's the reality. Honesty without compassion just sounds like criticism, and the people on the receiving end rarely tell you. They just start pulling back. One practical strategy that many find helpful is the THINK method before speaking. Ask yourself if what you're about to say is true, helpful, inspiring, necessary, kind. If it doesn't meet at least 3 of these criteria, it might be worth reconsidering. The beauty of growing older is the wisdom you carry. And when that wisdom is wrapped in kindness, people lean in, they listen, they respect you deeply. But when it comes coated in sarcasm or judgment, they start tuning out. Even if your intentions are good, your words still have power. Maybe now more than ever. Use them to build connection, not create distance. Number 3, wearing clothes that don't fit anymore. There's a certain comfort in routines. Eating the same breakfast, walking the same path, wearing the same clothes you've had for years. And there's nothing wrong with consistency. But when it comes to clothing, what once looked classic can, over time, begin to feel careless. You may not notice it yourself, but the way your clothes fit or don't says a lot about how connected you are to the present moment. Pants that hang too loose, shirts that cling too tight, outdated styles from 20 years ago, or shoes that have long since lost their shape. These aren't just fashion choices. They quietly send a message that you've stopped paying attention. As we age, our bodies naturally change. Weight shifts, posture adjusts, skin tone and hair color evolve. What flatters us at 70 is rarely the same as what worked at 50. Yet many older adults cling to a wardrobe that reflects their past self, not their present reality. Barbara Waxman, a gerontologist and author, observes that clothing becomes especially important as we age because it's one of the few aspects of appearance we can fully control. When older adults take the time to dress in a way that honors who they are now, it signals self-respect and presence. Here's where many go wrong. They assume that comfortable means sloppy or that age-appropriate means dowdy. Neither is true. Pay special attention to fit. Clothes that are too loose can make you appear frielier than you are, while clothes that are too tight can restrict movement and be physically uncomfortable. A good rule of thumb: if you're constantly tugging, pulling, or adjusting your clothing, it's not serving you well. Color matters too. As we age, skin tone often becomes paler or more yellow. The bold colors that once looked striking might now wash you out. Softer, slightly muted tones often work better. This doesn't mean you should only wear beige. Far from it. It just means finding the right shades that complement your current coloring. When people see an older adult in clothing that fits well, looks cared for, and reflects a sense of self-respect, they feel something instantly: admiration. It tells them this person still shows up in the world, not out of vanity, but dignity. Think about it. Would you wear the same suit to a job interview that you wore 25 years ago? Probably not. The same principle applies to everyday life. Our bodies change, our coloring shifts, and our energy evolves. Dressing in a way that reflects your current self, not your past, shows emotional presence and self-awareness. People won't compliment you directly. They may not even mention it at all, but they notice. They smile a little more. They treat you with a touch more reverence. Because like it or not, the way we dress is the first thing the world sees. And even in old age, that first impression still matters. Number 4, interrupting or dominating conversations. We all want to be heard, especially in our later years when we've lived through enough experiences to know a thing or two. But sometimes, In that desire to share what we know or to make sure our point is clear, we forget to leave room for others. It can start subtly. You're in a conversation, and someone brings up a topic you've dealt with before. You jump in. You offer a story. You start explaining what they should do. Before you know it, 10 minutes have passed, and no one else has spoken. What's tricky about this habit is that it doesn't come from a bad place. Most of the time, it's rooted in a genuine desire to help. But here's the problem. When we take up too much conversational space, we unintentionally silence the very people we care about. The science of listening is as important as the art of speaking. Dr. Michael Nichols, author of The Lost Art of Listening, points out that active listening actually improves brain health in older adults. When we truly listen and understand, not just to respond, we activate neural pathways related to empathy, memory, and integration. It's like cross-training for the brain. Yet many older adults find listening increasingly difficult. Hearing loss can play a significant role. Studies show that people with untreated hearing loss are more likely to interrupt or dominate conversations simply because they're missing parts of what others say. Even mild hearing loss can lead to conversational compensation behaviors like filling silence, changing subjects abruptly, or over-explaining. Even without hearing issues, years of being in authority positions as parents, managers, or experts in your field can create habits of directing rather than discussing. After decades of being the one with answers, it can feel strange to step back. How can you tell if you're dominating conversations? Look for these signs. People seem to check out mentally while you're speaking. Conversations often end shortly after you finish making your point. Family members exchange glances when you start speaking. You rarely learn new information about others during conversations. You frequently find yourself saying, "As I was saying," after being interrupted. Another practical approach is the 5-minute silence practice. Set a timer during family gatherings and challenge yourself to remain completely silent for 5 minutes, focusing solely on listening. It's eye-opening. Not only do they notice how difficult it is, but they're amazed at what they learn when they're not planning their next comment. Some medications can also affect conversational habits. Certain blood pressure medications, antidepressants, and Parkinson's treatments may reduce inhibition or increase talkativeness. If you notice a sudden change in your communication patterns, it's worth mentioning to your doctor. People want to feel seen and heard, not lectured. And when every conversation starts to feel like a one-way street, it quietly wears down the relationship. It's not about saying less. It's about listening more, letting there be pauses, asking more questions than you answer, and resisting the urge to jump with advice unless it's asked for. One of the most powerful things an older person can do in a conversation is to hold back just enough to let others fully express themselves. Not because you don't have something wise to say, but because they need to know that what they say matters too. And here's the irony. The less you dominate the conversation, the more people seek your input, the more you listen, the more they trust you. You become someone they want to talk to, not someone they feel they have to brace for. Number 5, complaining about kids these days. It starts as a simple observation. You see a teenager glued to their phone and think, back in my day, we actually talked to each other. You hear someone in their 30s making a decision you disagree with and think they have no idea how the real world works. And before you know it, these thoughts start slipping out in conversations with friends, with family, even with strangers. You may not realize it, but when you constantly criticize younger generations, it sends a powerful and often damaging message. It tells the people around you, especially your children and grandchildren, that you're not interested in understanding them, that you're stuck in a time that no longer exists. What's fascinating is that this intergenerational criticism isn't new. Historians have traced complaints about the youth back to ancient Greece. Socrates himself reportedly lamented, "The children now love luxury. They have bad manners, contempt for authority. They contradict their parents, chatter before company, gobble up dainties at the table, cross their legs, and tyrannize their teachers." Sound familiar? Every generation thinks the one coming up behind them is missing something. That's nothing new. But when that criticism becomes your default, it doesn't make people see you as wise. It makes them see you as bitter. The real damage happens when these comparisons turn into judgments. Research from Brigham Young University followed 300 grandparent-grandchild relationships over 7 years and found that grandchildren were 38% less likely to seek advice from grandparents who frequently made generational comparisons. Even more concerning, they were 52% less likely to disclose personal struggles or concerns. You might mean it as a joke. You might think you're just pointing out the obvious. But to the people hearing it, especially those under 50, it often feels like rejection, like you're dismissing their entire world, their values, their way of life. And the result? They stop opening up. They keep things light. They avoid deeper conversations because they're bracing for judgment. This approach, curiosity instead of criticism, is what psychologists call generative listening. It's about seeking understanding rather than confirming biases. And it works across all types of generational differences, whether related to technology, work ethics, relationships, or values. Some practical questions to replace critical statements. Instead of, "In my day, we worked harder," try, "How do you manage your workload these days? It seems so different from what I experience." Instead of, "Young people don't know how to communicate anymore," try, "I'm curious about how your generation stays connected. Can you show me?" Instead of, "Kids have it easy today," try, "What are the biggest challenges you're facing right now?" Remember, your value doesn't come from comparing the past to the present. It comes from bridging them, from being a steady hand that reaches across generations, not the voice that shouts from behind. And believe it or not, when younger people feel respected by you, they listen more. They ask questions. They come to you not because they have to, but because they want to. You become not just the elder in the room, but the one they admire, trust, and turn to, not for lectures, but for wisdom that listens first, then speaks. That's real influence. And it starts with letting go of the need to be right about how it used to be and leaning into who you can still be right now. Number 6, ignoring modern etiquette. There's a kind of social awareness that often goes unnoticed until it's not there. Things like speaking loudly on your phone in public, standing too close in line, or playing a video without headphones in a waiting room. Small behaviors, sure, but they can have a big impact on how others perceive you. Now, these things might not have been a big deal decades ago. Back then, people were more tolerant of loud conversations or unexpected behavior. But times change, expectations shift, and what used to be considered harmless now makes people quietly uncomfortable. And here's the tricky part. You may not even realize you're doing it. The greatest shift has come from technology. When many of today's seniors were in their prime, there were no cell phones, no text messages, no social media. Public spaces were governed by different norms. Today, according to the Pew Research Center, 97% of Americans own a cell phone, and with this ubiquitous technology has come an entirely new set of social expectations. Here are 7 essential modern etiquette rules that may not have existed when you were younger. Phone volume control. Conversations and media should be audible only to you in public spaces. The arm's length rule suggests that if someone standing an arm's length away can hear your device, it's too loud. Personal space expansion. Traditional personal space, about 18 inches in American culture, has expanded post-COVID. Many people now prefer 3 to 4 feet of distance in lines and waiting areas. Digital privacy. It's now considered inappropriate to look over someone's shoulder, their phone, or computer screen, even briefly, something that wasn't an issue with newspapers. Photo consent. Taking photos of strangers or even family members without permission has become a significant faux pas, especially with the possibility of images being shared online. Fragrance sensitivity. Wearing heavy perfume or cologne in enclosed public spaces, theaters, restaurants, medical offices, is increasingly viewed as inconsiderate due to rising awareness of chemical sensitivities. Appointment punctuality. The acceptable window for arriving early to appointments has narrowed. Showing up more than 5 to 10 minutes early is now often considered as inconvenient as being late. Digital line cutting. Continuing to use your phone when it's your turn at a counter or checkout is now viewed as disrespectful to service workers and others waiting. No one pulls you aside and says, "Hey, could you turn that down?" Or, "Do you mind stepping back a little?" Instead, they'll give you a look or avoid eye contact or move to another seat. It's not personal, but it is real. And whether it's on the subway, in a coffee shop, or even just walking to a store, these little breaches of what people now consider common courtesy send a message. They say, I'm not aware of how I affect others. The truth is, people don't always give older adults the benefit of the doubt. They often assume you should know better. So when they see these behaviors, they don't chalk it up to misunderstanding. They chalk it up to disregard. That's not the legacy you want to leave. And fortunately, it's one of the easiest things to fix. Start noticing how people around you behave in public spaces, how they manage their volume, how they navigate personal space, how they engage with technology when others are around. Modern etiquette isn't about being uptight. It's about being considerate. It shows that you're still tuned into the world, still engaged, still aware of the impact you have on others. And that awareness builds respect. It tells people, I may be older, but I'm still someone who pays attention, someone who adapts, someone who cares about how others feel. That doesn't just improve how strangers respond to you. It changes how your own family sees you. 2. Grandkids notice, neighbors notice, and their quiet admiration grows. Because in a world that's always rushing, someone who moves with awareness, who carries themselves with subtle dignity, stands out more than ever. Number 7, oversharing medical problems. We've all heard the joke. Get a few older folks together, and the conversation turns into a contest of who's got the worst knee, the highest blood pressure, or the most medications lined up on the bathroom shelf. And while it may seem like harmless talk or even a way to relate, constantly bringing up your health issues can slowly wear down the energy of those around you. Here's the thing. Everyone knows that getting older comes with its fair share of physical challenges. You don't have to pretend everything's perfect. But when your conversations always circle back to what hurts, what the doctor said, or what's next on the surgery list, people start to feel like they're in a waiting room, not a relationship. This phenomenon has a name in psychology: pain disclosure. Dr. Susan Harris from the University of California explains, talking about pain and illness serves important purposes: validation, connection, information gathering. But when it becomes a primary mode of interaction, it creates what we call compassion fatigue in listeners. Studies show that listeners experience measurable stress responses when repeatedly exposed to health complaints: increased heart rate, elevated cortisol levels, and diminished cognitive performance. This isn't because they don't care. It's because they care so much that it becomes overwhelming. Especially for younger family members, these topics can feel particularly difficult. They may not know how to respond, or they may feel helpless hearing about things they can't fix. So instead of leaning in, they back away, not out of disrespect, but out of quiet exhaustion. The psychology of misery comparison is also worth exploring. Many older adults engage in what researchers call competitive suffering, unconsciously trying to establish social hierarchy through whose health challenges are most severe. This behavior often stems from fear of being overlooked or concerns about decreasing relevance. Health issues are unquestionably important, and you absolutely deserve support and understanding. But finding the right balance is key. Many therapists and relationship experts recommend the 30-70 rule. Limit health discussions to about 30% of your conversation time, leaving 70% for other topics that bring joy, curiosity, and connection. For those who find themselves regularly steering conversations toward health problems, it's worth asking, what need is this meeting? Are you seeking practical help, emotional support, or simply acknowledgement? Once you identify the underlying need, you might find more effective ways to address it. You might be surprised how much lighter your relationships feel when you stop letting your health lead every conversation. When you focus on what you can do, what you enjoy doing, and what still sparks a smile, you don't just feel better, you help others feel better too. And in a world that already feels heavy, being someone who lifts the room, even a little, is a beautiful kind of medicine all its own. Number 8, being stubborn about outdated beliefs. One of the hardest things to notice in ourselves, especially as we age, is when our beliefs start turning into walls instead of windows. We hold on to ideas that once served us well, principles that shaped how we raised our families, ran our businesses, and made sense of the world. But over time, if we're not careful, Those beliefs can harden into absolutes that no longer reflect the world we're living in now. You might find yourself saying things like, "That's just how it is," or "People are too sensitive these days," or "I don't care what the science says, I know what's right." And while you may feel confident in your views, what others often hear is something very different: resistance. This is not just about politics or religion, though those are common flashpoints. It can show up in attitudes about gender roles, career paths, mental health, child rearing, technology, or even food preferences. The world has changed, and it's still changing. Technology, culture, gender roles, mental health awareness, the way we communicate. It's all evolving fast. And when we dig our heels in and refuse to even consider another perspective, it doesn't come across as wisdom. It comes across as unwillingness. Younger generations notice the stubbornness. And again, they usually won't confront you directly. But inside, they quietly label you as someone they can't talk to about certain things, someone who won't understand, someone who doesn't want to. And that's a real loss. Because whether it's your grandchild questioning traditional careers or your neighbor living a lifestyle you don't fully understand, there's so much connection possible when curiosity replaces judgment. Barbara, a 75-year-old from Arizona, recognized this pattern in herself after her grandson stopped sharing details about his life. "I realized I'd shut down conversations by being dismissive of his choices. I didn't mean to be closed-minded, but I was..." She developed a 5-step practice when confronted with ideas that challenged her beliefs. Pause. Take a deep breath before responding. Ask, "Tell me more about why you see it that way." Listen. Focus on understanding, not formulating a rebuttal. Reflect. "Let me think about that." Respond. Begin with, "I see your point," even when disagreeing. This approach transformed her relationship with her grandchildren. "I still don't agree with everything, but now we can discuss differences without tension. And I've actually changed my mind on several things I was sure about." Here's what's often missed in discussions about belief flexibility. Staying open doesn't mean you abandon your values. Core principles like honesty, compassion, and respect for others can remain steadfast while your understanding of how those values apply in today's world evolves. It means you're willing to update your understanding without compromising who you are. It means making room at the table for new ideas, even if you don't agree with all of them. Stubbornness often hides fear. Fear of losing relevance. Fear of being left behind. Fear that if we let go of old beliefs, we lose a piece of ourselves. But the truth is, your relevance doesn't come from how firmly you hold on to the past. It comes from how courageously you meet the present. When you're able to say, "I never thought of it that way," or "Tell me more about what that means to you," you open doors and people walk through them. They feel safe. And the beautiful part is, sometimes you do change your mind. Sometimes the younger person you're listening to turns out to be right in ways you hadn't imagined. And that humility, that willingness, that's what makes people truly admire you. Not because you had all the answers, but because you stayed a student of life even in old age. That's rare and it's powerful. Number 9, walking or moving without awareness of space. As we age, our pace changes. We slow down a little. We might feel less steady or more cautious with our steps, and that's completely natural. But what often happens without us realizing it is that we become less aware of how our movements affect the people around us. You've probably seen it. Someone standing in the middle of a grocery aisle, cart sideways, completely blocking the way while scanning a label. Or someone stopping suddenly in a busy walkway, lost in thought, or walking with a friend and slowly drifting into the path of oncoming foot traffic. Most of the time, these things happen without bad intent. You're not trying to be inconsiderate. You're simply focused on your own task. But to people around you, especially those in a hurry or navigating tight spaces, it feels like friction, like you're creating small obstacles that make their day a little harder. A study from the National Institute on Aging found that by age 70, many people experience up to a 20 to 30% reduction in their visual field compared to their younger years. This means you literally may not see the person trying to get around you or notice that your shopping cart is blocking the aisle. Neuroscientist Dr. Sandra Wilson notes, when we're younger, our brains automatically process multiple streams of information. Our task at hand plus environmental awareness. As cognitive load increases with age, many older adults unconsciously prioritize the immediate task, filtering out background information like others moving around them. And here's the key part. People rarely say anything. They just sigh, walk around you, maybe give a quick glance, and carry on. But over time, these small moments add up in how others perceive you. They might start to see you as that person who's always in the way. Or they may silently decide to avoid situations where they'd have to walk beside you, shop with you, or navigate public spaces together. Not because they don't like you, but because they feel like they have to manage you. So what can you do? First, compensate for narrow peripheral vision by developing a habit of regularly scanning your surroundings. Every 30 to 60 seconds, take a moment to look up from what you're doing and check who's around you. In stores, position your cart to one side of the aisle rather than the middle. When walking with others, try to stay to the right in the U.S. to allow others to pass. Simple awareness exercises can help. Elizabeth, an occupational therapist who works with seniors, suggests this daily practice. Whenever you enter a new environment, a room, a store, a sidewalk, take 3 seconds to mentally map the space and your position in it. This brief pause builds a habit of spatial awareness. Assistive devices can help too, though many resist them. Walking sticks aren't just for stability. They help define your space and make you more visible to others. Properly fitted hearing aids improve your ability to locate sound spatially, enhancing your awareness of people approaching from behind. Now, I want to be clear, slowing down is not the problem. The issue is awareness. You can move slowly and still be respectful of space. You can pause to read something and still keep to one side. You can walk carefully while being mindful of the flow around you. This is especially important in places like airports, busy sidewalks, malls, or even church hallways. These are shared spaces, and being considerate in them sends a strong message that you're still paying attention, that you still care about how you impact others. In fact, this kind of awareness is a subtle form of grace. It tells people you're not just focused inward, you're present, thoughtful, and kind. And the truth is, most people aren't expecting perfection. They're just hoping for a little effort, a little awareness, a little consideration. When you show that you stand out not as a slower person, but as a considerate one, someone who still moves through the world with dignity and a quiet sense of responsibility. And that kind of presence is more powerful than you might realize. Number 10, making jokes that don't age well. A good sense of humor is one of the best things you can carry into old age. It keeps you light, keeps others comfortable, and helps ease tension in even the hardest moments. But not all humor ages gracefully, and some jokes, especially the ones that once got a laugh decades ago, can quietly push people away today. You might be joking the way you always have. A little sarcasm here, a teasing remark there, maybe a comment that plays off old stereotypes or pokes fun at someone's background, appearance, or choices. You might even laugh as you say it and follow up with, "I'm just messing with you," or "Come on, lighten up." But here's what's changed: the world around you. The evolution of humor in American society has been dramatic. Dr. Peter McGraw, founder of the Humor Research Lab at the University of Colorado, explains, humor is highly contextual and constantly evolving. What was acceptable in a 1970s sitcom would likely not make it past the first table read today. Not because people are too sensitive, but because our collective understanding of respect has expanded. When a joke feels out of step with contemporary values, it doesn't come across as funny. It comes across as disconnected or, worse, disrespectful. And they probably won't tell you. They'll just laugh politely, then avoid getting too close. You'll feel the distance, but maybe not understand where it came from. With guidance from his family, Harold learned to recognize the difference between inclusive and exclusive humor. Now I focus on situational humor. Things we all experience, like forgetting why I walked into a room or the absurdity of TV commercials. The response has been amazing. My grandkids actually think I'm funny again. Here's a simple way to evaluate your humor. Does a joke bring people together through shared experience, or does it single out differences? Does it rely on stereotypes, or does it highlight life's universal absurdities? Is it at someone else's expense, or is it playful without targeting specific groups? That doesn't mean you have to walk on eggshells. It doesn't mean humor is off limits. But it does mean thinking twice before you default to certain kinds of jokes. Ask yourself, is this funny because it's clever or because it puts someone else down? The best kind of humor, especially in older age, is the kind that lifts people up, that brings lightness, not discomfort, that shows you're not stuck in the past but evolving right along with everyone else. In fact, nothing builds connection faster than being able to laugh at yourself. It shows humility. It shows perspective. It shows that you're not trying to prove anything. You're just here to enjoy the moment with others. When people see that kind of self-awareness in your humor, they relax. They engage. They start seeing you not just as the older person in the room, but as someone who still gets it. A kind sense of humor will take you far, but humor that's thoughtful, self-aware, and a little updated for today. That'll keep the door to connection wide open at any age. Number 11, acting helpless when you're not. Getting older brings real challenges. No one's denying that. There are things that used to come easy that now take more time, more care, sometimes more help. But there's a difference between needing help and defaulting to it when you don't have to. And over time, that difference becomes something people notice more than they'll ever admit. Maybe you've gotten used to saying, "Can you just do it for me?" Or, "I don't know how any of this works. I'll mess it up anyway." At first, those requests feel innocent, but when they become habits, especially for things you're still capable of doing, they can quietly start to wear on the people around you. Family members might start feeling like caretakers, even when you're perfectly able. Friends may notice that they're always the ones lifting, reaching, fixing, organizing. And though they might smile and say, "No problem," inside they begin to feel something else, resentment. Psychologists call this phenomenon learned helplessness, a concept first identified by researcher Martin Seligman in the 1960s. While his original studies focus on animals, the principle applies remarkably well to human behavior, especially in aging. Dr. Laura Carstensen of Stanford's Longevity Center explains, "When we repeatedly avoid tasks we find challenging or anxiety-producing, we condition ourselves to believe we're incapable. Over time, this becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. What's even more complex is that sometimes this behavior is subconscious. It's not laziness. It's fear. Fear of doing it wrong. Fear of looking silly. Fear of not keeping up. So you let someone else step in. And with each little surrender, your independence slips just a bit more. The consequences extend beyond annoyed family members." Research published in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that older adults who regularly avoided manageable challenges experienced measurably faster cognitive decline than those who persisted through difficulty. In other words, consistently taking the path of least resistance actually accelerates the very decline many fear. This pattern often develops gradually. Sarah, a gerontologist who counsels families, observes, "It typically starts with technology, asking for help with smartphones or computers. Then it expands other areas, ordering at restaurants, making appointments, handling paperwork. Before long, the older person has unnecessarily surrendered large portions of their independence. People admire effort more than perfection. They'd rather see you try and struggle a little than give up altogether. Your children, your grandchildren, even your neighbors, they feel proud when you show you're still in the game, that you still want to learn, move, participate. And when you ask for help only when you truly need it, they trust you more. They don't feel like they're being manipulated or taken for granted. They feel honored to step in because they know it comes from a place of honesty, not habit. Modern technology has created wonderful tools to support independence without requiring assistance from others. Voice-activated devices like Amazon Echo or Google Home can set reminders, make calls, or look up information without requiring technical skills. Medication organizers with alarms help maintain health routines independently. Rideshare apps provide transportation options without needing to ask for rides. Maintaining your sense of agency isn't about pretending you're 30 again. It's about showing up with what you can do, asking clearly for what you can't, and respecting the line between the two. You'd be amazed how empowered you feel when you start reclaiming the little things. Carry your own bag, figuring out the new remote, following a recipe without asking someone to hover. These small wins build confidence. They remind you and everyone around you that age may change what you're capable of, but it doesn't take away your strength, your will, or your dignity. Because the people who truly age well aren't the ones who never ask for help. They're the ones who know when to ask and when to stand tall and say, "I've got this." Number 12, pretending you're always right. We all like to feel we've earned our place at the table, especially after decades of life experience, hard choices, and lessons learned the long way. So, it's understandable that at a certain point, many older adults feel like they got the answers, that they've seen enough to know how things work. And in many cases, they do. But here's where it gets tricky. When the need to be right overshadows the need to connect, people stop listening. It might show up in small ways. Correcting someone's story at dinner, insisting your way of doing something is the only way that makes sense, rolling your eyes at new ideas, or brushing off someone else's opinion with, "Trust me, I know better." At first, others may shrug it off. They might even laugh. But over time, being around someone who always has to be right becomes exhausting. People start avoiding meaningful conversations. They withhold their thoughts. They stop challenging you, not because you convince them, but because it's just easier to stay quiet. Research from Harvard University's Department of Psychology reveals why this pattern is so common in older adults. Dr. Ellen Langer, who has studied mindfulness and decision-making for over 40 years, explains, as we accumulate experience, we naturally build confidence in our judgments. But there's a tipping point where confidence can become certainty, and certainty shuts down learning. The most effective thinkers at any age maintain what we call confident uncertainty, strong views, loosely held. This balance is particularly challenging for today's seniors, who grew up in an era when authority was less frequently questioned. Many were raised with clear hierarchies in families, workplaces, and communities. The rapid democratization of knowledge through the internet has upended these structures, creating a world where expertise is more distributed and accessible. The irony is, many older folks don't do this to be arrogant. They do it to feel safe, to feel like they still have authority in a world that's changing quickly around them. But when being right becomes more important than being kind or curious, it backfires. Being wise doesn't mean having all the answers. It means knowing when to offer your perspective and when to let someone else explore theirs. It means holding your opinions with confidence, but also with openness. Because here's the truth most people don't say out loud. The people we admire most aren't the ones who correct us. They're the ones who listen, reflect, and gently invite us to think differently without forcing it. James, 81, a retired professor, developed a simple practice after realizing he'd become increasingly dogmatic. Before I offer my opinion, I ask myself, is my goal to be right or to be connected? That one question has transformed how I engage with others. When you stop trying to win every discussion, people actually start coming to you more. They ask your opinion. They value your feedback. Not because you dominate the room, but because your words carry calm, thoughtful weight. And when you do speak, because you don't speak just to win, your voice lands deeper. It sticks. It matters. In the end, the need to be right fades. What lasts is how you made people feel. And when you leave space for others to be heard, challenged, and uplifted, your presence becomes something they truly treasure, not tolerate. Now that we've gone through these habits and their deeper dimensions, take a moment to reflect gently, without judgment. Which of these patterns have quietly crept into your daily life? Which ones caught you by surprise? And which do you feel ready to shift, even if just a little? This video wasn't meant to shame or criticize. It was created to give you something most people don't. Honest insight wrapped in care. Because the truth is, these behaviors don't make you a bad person. They're simply blind spots. Things that settle in over time without us noticing. And once we do notice, that's when real strength shows, not in pretending they don't exist, but in saying, I see it. I can do better. I still have the power to grow. That's what aging well is really about. Not clinging to the past, not resisting change, but stepping into each new day with self-awareness, grace, and the quiet strength of someone who still wants to connect, evolve, and be a source of warmth in other people's lives. The writer and philosopher Aldous Huxley once said, "The secret of genius is to carry the spirit of the child into old age." Perhaps the secret of aging gracefully is similar. It's about carrying the learner's mind, the open heart, the willing spirit forward, even as our bodies and circumstances change. Small adjustments in how you speak, listen, dress, joke, or interact can completely transform how people experience you and how you experience your own place in the world. And while change may feel challenging, remember that you've been adapting your entire life. You've navigated far bigger transitions in adjusting how you carry yourself in conversation or how you respond to new ideas. As you move forward, keep these signs in mind, not as a checklist, but as gentle reminders, ways to keep showing up in the world with dignity, presence, and the kind of character that leaves others feeling respected, comfortable, and inspired. And remember, it's never too late to shift how you move through the world. Even the smallest changes can open doors to deeper connections, greater respect, and more joy in your remaining years. Because ultimately, the greatest gift you can give those around you and yourself is the willingness to keep growing, no matter your age. Thank you for joining us today. We'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below and share one thing you learned today and how you plan to use it in your life. Your thoughts are important to us, so don't hesitate to share them. Reading your comments gives us great motivation and encouragement. If you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, please like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps us continue creating good content to inform and inspire you. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to seeing you in the next video.